January 25th, 2026, Tynecastle erupts as Claudio Braga equalizes in the 87th minute. Hearts 2, Celtic 2. Without their top scorer, without their first-choice midfielder, and despite having been behind twice. Hearts don't win that day, but they don't lose. And above all, they remain leaders of the Scottish Premiership, a club valued at just 22 million euros, coming off 12 points out of 12 against Celtic and Rangers. After this match, Hearts now sit on 13 points out of 15 against the Old Firm, something that hasn't been seen in decades. But before understanding how Hearts are breaking 40 years of dominance and one of the fiercest rivalries in world football, you first need to understand what the Old Firm really represents. Because this rivalry is unlike any other in Europe, and above all, because it has ended up reshaping the entire structure of Scottish football. The rivalry begins at the end of the 19th century in a deeply divided country. On one side, Rangers, founded in 1872, a club historically associated with the Protestant, Unionist, and relatively bourgeois community. On the other, Celtic, founded in 1887 by an Irish monk to support poor Catholic immigrant families in Glasgow. Catholics versus Protestants, Ireland versus Great Britain, working class versus established elites. The lines were drawn from the very beginning, and their first match in 1888 ended in a 5-2 win for Celtic, a symbol that launched more than a century of confrontation. In Scotland, it's often said that the Old Firm is not a sporting rivalry. It's a cultural, identity-based, sometimes even political rivalry. But what's even more interesting is this. The rivalry hasn't only played out on the pitch, it has shaped the league as a whole. As early as 1891, the first official top-flight season, Rangers were champions. 2 years later, it was Celtic's turn, and from there on, the dominance of the two Glasgow clubs became permanent. Out of the 129 seasons played to date, Celtic and Rangers have each won 55 titles, 110 championships between them. This is the most overwhelming hegemony in all of European football. The last club to break the cycle was Aberdeen in 1985, more than 40 years ago, led by a young manager named Alex Ferguson. Since then, no one has managed it. The most absurd part is that even when one of the two clubs has a bad season, the outcome is always the same. If one doesn't win the title, the other does. If one finishes second, the other finishes first. The rest of the country plays a different competition altogether, the race for third place. This domination has only grown stronger over time. The two clubs have more fans, more revenue, more European appearances, bigger budgets, more visibility, more of everything. And eventually, the gaps became impossible to close. Today, the squad value of Celtic or Rangers is 5 to 6 times higher than that of clubs like Hearts, Aberdeen, or Hibernian. In short, in Scotland, the Old Firm doesn't just dominate, it defines football, and for 40 years, nothing has escaped it. It's within this context, in a league where everything seems decided in advance, that an unexpected club is now starting to challenge the entire order. Because now that we understand the scale of Celtic and Rangers' monopoly, one question naturally arises. How did a club like Heart of Midlothian, with such an unusual name, manage to slip in between these two giants? To understand that, we need to go back a few years. In 2013, Hearts were on the brink of collapse. The Edinburgh club was drowning in debt, placed under administration, hit with a 15-point deduction, and bankruptcy seemed inevitable. This was no longer about sporting results, but about survival. Hearts were simply at risk of disappearing. That's when something extremely rare in modern football happened. The supporters decided to save the club themselves. 8,000 of them came together, each contributing what they could, and created a collective they called the Foundation of Hearts. Alongside them, one woman played a decisive role. Anne Budge, a Scottish entrepreneur. She put £2.5 million on the table to clear the debts and stabilize the club. But from day one, she made a clear promise. Once Hearts were stable again, she would hand control of the club back to the supporters. That promise was kept in 2021. Hearts then became a truly unique club. Around 75% of the shares are owned directly by the fans. Hearts are literally owned by the people who fill Tynecastle every weekend, making them the largest supporter-owned club in the UK. But this community model doesn't transform a club overnight. For years, Hearts move forward step by step. Supporters contribute around £1.5 million every season, allowing the club to clean up its finances, improve infrastructure, modernize Tynecastle, add a small 25-room hotel inside the stadium, and finally build a proper youth development structure. It's a slow, cautious, sometimes frustrating rebuild, but a necessary one to fully escape the chaos of 2013. And yet, despite all these efforts, Hearts remained a long way behind the two Glasgow Giants. On paper, Celtic and Rangers were untouchable. In budget, squad depth, European experience, and overall attractiveness, to break a 40-year domination, something more was needed. A catalyst capable of changing the club's entire scale. And that catalyst would arrive in 2024 with a man European football already knows very well. The same man who turned Brighton from a third division English club into a team firmly established in the Premier League. The same man who helped Union Saint-Gilloise win their first Belgian league title in nearly 90 years. That man is Tony Bloom. Bloom is not a typical owner. He is a former professional poker player turned multimillionaire, an expert in statistics, risk, and probabilities, and above all, a pioneer in the use of data in football. For over 15 years, he has been building his clubs like ultra-efficient machines. Smart recruitment, identification of undervalued talent, statistical models, sporting stability, and long-term vision. In 2024, Hearts shocked everyone by announcing Bloom's arrival, but not as an owner. He simply injected £10 million to become a minority shareholder while leaving control in the hands of the supporters, a position that is extremely rare in modern football. Bloom wanted to be a strategic partner, not the man in charge, but his real contribution is not visible in the club's shareholding. It lies in a company he brings with him everywhere, Jamestown Analytics, his football data laboratory. This is the structure that identified Mitoma for Brighton, Boniface for Union Saint-Gilloise, and dozens of unknown players who later became high-performance assets. And from the very first transfer window after his arrival, Hearts began to see the benefits. Players unknown to the wider public coming from the English 4th Division, the Dutch 2nd Division, or the mid-table of the Slovak 1st Division, signed for minimal fees but perfectly suited to the club's style and needs. Claudio Braga is the perfect example. Recruited for a tiny fee from Ålesund in the Norwegian top division and immediately decisive in his first season. With Bloom, Hearts suddenly changed scale. Without spending fortunes, without going into debt, and without betraying their identity as a people's club, they start recruiting better than anyone else. They start looking where others don't even bother to search. And that's where the story becomes fascinating. Hearts didn't buy stars. Hearts didn't hire a glamorous manager. Hearts simply adopted a model that had already proven it could bring down giants. And very quickly, that model would produce its first shockwave in the Scottish Premiership. The 2025 to 2026 season begins like every other one in Scotland. Celtic and Rangers are the favorites. Everyone expects a two-horse race, as always. Hearts can realistically aim for a European spot, nothing more. Just a few months earlier, the club had finished in the bottom half of the table, 41 points behind Celtic. But very quickly, something starts to crack in the usual picture. After the first 12 match days, Hearts are still unbeaten. They beat Rangers 2-0, Celtic 3-1. They win the Edinburgh Derby against Hibernian. They take points everywhere without ever looking shaky. And for the first time in 40 years, people start asking the question, can someone actually break the duopoly? What makes this run even more insane is that Hearts are not playing in any European competition. No midweek trips across the continent. No exhausted squad. No brutal schedule. While Celtic and Rangers juggle the Europa League, the Scottish Cup, and the League Cup, Hearts only have the league to focus on. The machine slowly settles in. Everything peaks at the end of the first half of the season, when Hearts achieve the unthinkable, beating both Glasgow Giants in Glasgow, and then again at Tynecastle, in a league where teams face each other 3 times in the first phase. Before the January 2026 match against Celtic, Hearts had taken 12 points out of 12 against the two clubs, a statistically absurd achievement. And during that famous Hearts-Celtic game on January 25th, a high-tension match, one where Hearts are missing their 2 best players, the club equalizes twice, snatches a 2-2 draw in an electric atmosphere, and extends the run to 13 points out of 15 against the 2 monsters of Scottish football. Even Martin O'Neill, Celtic's manager, admits it after the match. He acknowledges that Hearts' presence makes the league more exciting, more alive, more unpredictable. He admits that this team is writing something completely unprecedented. Today, Hearts lead the league with, after 23 match days, a 4-point lead over Rangers and a 6-point lead over Celtic. For a club that hasn't been champion since 1960, for a club without the budgets, the infrastructure, or the media aura of the 2 giants, this achievement is not just sporting success. It is a statistical anomaly reminiscent of Leicester in 2016 or Montpellier in 2012. And now a question arises. What would happen if Hearts managed to win the league? Because their victory wouldn't just be a sporting achievement, it could genuinely change the face of Scottish football. and the consequences go far beyond a single trophy. The first consequence would be symbolic but massive. It would be the triumph of a model unique in Great Britain. A club majority owned by its own supporters, built without debt, without an omnipresent billionaire, and capable of toppling two century-old institutions. That alone would already make Hearts a textbook case. But the most important effects would be financial. The Scottish champions gain access to the Champions League playoffs, with a chance to reach the league phase. Qualification would represent 25 to 30 million euros in revenue, more than Hearts' entire total annual revenue last season. For a club of this size, it would be an immediate economic leap, allowing them to keep their best players, strengthen the squad, and above all, stabilize a model built to last, and potentially transform Scottish football by creating a three-way title race instead of a two-horse one. For 40 years in Scotland, a club could only exist behind Celtic and Rangers. Third place was the ceiling. If Hearts break through that barrier, it won't just be a sporting victory, it will be proof that the duopoly is not indestructible. Proof that a well-structured, well-managed club backed by intelligent recruitment strategy can rewrite a league everyone thought was frozen. Hearts may not change the balance on their own, but they could be the ones who open the crack. Hearts don't yet know whether they'll go all the way, but what they've already achieved is enough to make the 2025 to 2026 season historic. They've challenged 40 years of domination, rewritten expectations, and shown that another model is possible in Scotland. So the question is, can Hearts go all the way? And could this title really transform Scottish football? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next ones. See you soon. Bye.